Hello, everyone. Marjorie Roman here, and we have the pleasure of having the amazing Bob Allen. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Marjorie. Today is the day somebody's going to be watching, listening. They're going to hear an idea. They're going to say, I could do that. And that's one of my specialties, is taking a very complicated subject like real estate investing and boil it down so simple that you go, why am I not doing that? And so people have fear, and they sit on the sidelines. Right now, the news is interest rates are going up, and the buyers are dropping out. They're not buying any longer because of this fear. If we move further and further into a recession, any recessionary time, you're always going to have that's called a buyer's market. That means when buyers are supposed to buy. Unfortunately, most of the buyers sit on the sidelines during a buyer's market. They don't buy. Only smart buyers buy.
That's true.
Stupid buyers don't buy. And no matter what the market is, at any time, anywhere in this country, matter of fact, worldwide, you can buy property with little or no money down at any time. There is no wrong time to be buying real estate. There's just a wrong strategy. So let's talk a little bit about that today.
That is true. And one of the many strategies that we have seen getting more popular over time is short-term rentals, such as Airbnb. So what are some of your thoughts on short-term rentals?
Well, it's a hot topic ever since Airbnb really became more popular about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. How could you make money with an Airbnb rental? Usually you're thinking, well, I'm going to use an Airbnb for me. I'm going to go on a vacation. I'm going to find somebody who has a property. I'm going to rent it. I'm going to give them their monthly payment or their payment for whatever time frame I have. What if you became the not the owner? You don't have to own it, but what if you controlled the rental of it? That's essentially what an Airbnb is. You are signing an agreement with an owner that you'll be renting that property either yourself or for somebody else that you put in there in your place. So there are a lot of legal requirements. You got to make sure that you have the permission to do that through your Airbnb documentation. But the bottom line is, what I love about Airbnb rentals is that it doesn't require a lot of money up front. You can control $1 million property with whatever it takes to rent it for a week, So if it's $1,000 a week, that's what it takes usually, and that plus some kind of a deposit. You don't have to have. They usually don't check your credit. They usually don't check large amounts of down payment. They don't check your financial statement. Some will. Some will be really fussy about that. But most people in the Airbnb world are not professional. They're just people trying to make an extra buck because they had a rental in Miami or in Hawaii or some other place in the world. They're just renting it out in the meantime so that when they go on their vacation, they can move into their own property and without having to pay for it. And the rest of the year just pays for, gives them some extra cash flow. So, there are a lot of experts out there that talk about how to do this as a business. Mm-hmm. Renting an Airbnb is it's different than owning your own property and renting it out like a landlord. Right. You are going to have some issues you have to deal with, some challenges, some problems because people move in. There isn't enough deposit. You'd be on the hook for it, because you're the one who signed the name to the Airbnb agreement. But usually you're going to get more cash flow from an Airbnb, even if it's vacant a week or two a month. Mm-hmm. You're going to get more cash flow because a weekly rental is sometimes as much as a normal, ordinary monthly rental would be in a regular home if you were renting it out. So extra cash flows without a lot of huge financial investment on your part, without owning it at all. It is all kinds of advantages. So you're talking about a strategy. This is one little strategy and all the many, many ways of making money in real estate. This one is a hot one.
That's true, especially because people like flexibility, And nowadays there's so many people out there that have this one property that they've never thought about that could easily be rented for a short-term rental, in this case Airbnb, and you could get way more profit that way instead of having it just vacant, trying to look for a long-term rental.
Well, there's two aspects of Airbnb. First of all, if you own the property and it happens to be in a fairly popular area, rather than renting it out to a one tenant on a monthly basis, you turn it into an Airbnb. So when people think of a single family home strategy, they usually think of putting in one tenant and having enough money from that tenant to pay the mortgage, the extra costs, maybe a little bit of cash flow. By going into an Airbnb with a property that you own, you can probably double your income, maybe even more, depending upon, how close you are to the fun areas. It's just a way to increase the cash flows from a property that didn't exist. Just think about 10 years ago when there wasn't Airbnb and these kinds of extra ways of getting vacation rentals. There wasn't this strategy. And then somebody came along and thought, look at all these millions and millions of properties that are sitting vacant right now. Is there a way to turn that into extra cash flow? And bam. 10, 15 years ago, there was nothing like this.
That's
so
right.
we're living in brand new ways of making money.
That's true, especially because I feel like for us landlords, like I personally have a couple of rentals, and there was a period of time where I didn't have any tenants. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
When one of my friends came over and told me, well, why don't you do an Airbnb until you get a long-term rental?
Yeah.
So I ended up using that property as an Airbnb, getting some cash flow still, collecting all of that. And then when I had a true applicant for a tenant for like a 1 or 2 year lease, I was like, okay, cool. I didn't have that gap in the year of not having cash flow. I had something that was still producing some income for me.
That's so good story.
I feel like that it's like a really good strategy that you can do in case that you have vacant months in your properties.
Exactly.
Because I know that also some leases, they also start like after a certain period of time. And what are you going to do with those empty months? You're not just going to sit there with your property while you're paying all your mortgage on that one, right?
When we're talking about investments, we're talking about two ways of thinking about money. One is called active and one's called passive. So passive investing is where you don't have to, it's hands off. You put the money in, you let it ride. A stock market or a bond where the money just flows to you automatically. Generally speaking, real estate is more active. I mean, you have to do things to earn the money. You've got to rent it out to somebody. And if it's a long-term rental with one tenant, it's usually more passive. You really don't have to, go over there and fix things all the time. Sometimes you can rent it out in such a way that all the tenant takes care of all improvements and everything else like that. And you give them a special, rental rate to do that. So it's more and more passive for you. As you move from that kind of passivity, which is one of the reasons why I like real estate, because it's a business that requires the least amount of work. Real estate does.
That produces the more cash flow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you move up the chain into more activity, more income, it means you have to be more involved. So if you're doing an Airbnb, that means you have to do advertising, you have to follow through, you have to post all over the place so people can find you. When they do, you have to check them out. You get the deposits. You got to move them in. You got to clean up after they've gone. It's a hotel, really, in a sense. So it requires much more active involvement. So in addition to an Airbnb, there might be another way of having more tenants. The point is, rather than having one long-term tenant, you can have fewer short-term tenants. You can have student housing around universities, for example. Any property that's close to a major university can be rented out to multiple students and renting out each room to a single student. And that can, when you have each bedroom rented out singly like that, it can double your income if it was just a one long-term tenant.
That's true.
So, and I mentioned earlier about having a assisted living. You know, you move up the chain. You want more money. It requires more activity. So an ordinary tenant, long-term tenant, no hassle or lower hassle. Airbnb, student housing, assisted living, all ways of dramatically increasing cash flow requiring more and more effort on your part. So if you're willing to do that extra activity, you can definitely earn a full-time income. You know, rather than working at a job that you don't like, you can take one property and convert it into your job.
That's true.
And then rather than, you know, you could say, if I own the property, I work on my job and I have one property, two properties, three properties on the side, it doesn't require a lot of work. But what if I quit my job and turned those 4 or 5 properties from long-term tenants into short-term tenants, enough cash flow to pay for what I was earning at the job I didn't like.
Or even more.
Yeah, or even more than that. So real estate, most beginners would never even think about that because they've never experienced owning a property that could be a cash cow. See, so real estate's a cash cow. If you know how to feed that cow, it's good. It's good time. Good stuff.
That's true. And that's one of the beauties about real estate, that it doesn't matter if you want to be more involved in that business or a little bit more like out of there and like passive, I guess. You can do anything when you're a real estate investor. There's like a flavor, I guess, for each of the people that are looking at us there.
So which one of those strategies appeals to you, our viewer, our listener? Which one do you really feel would be a natural for you? Right. Maybe you like to deal with people. Maybe you enjoy, hospitality, so you create a little portfolio of Airbnbs. It could be in one city, or it could be an Airbnb in multiple cities. You've got a portfolio now. And if one property isn't available any longer, then there's just another 1,000 other properties around the same location. As soon as you become an expert in that city, there are lots of other options. So what's powerful about Airbnb, the opportunities are everywhere. You're driving down the street, you don't realize that 6 or 7 of those properties are Airbnb right now. So think about it.
That's true. Thank you so much again, Bob. And thank you to our audience. So there you have it. There's a flavor for every single real estate investor out there. Just make sure that you use the right strategy for the type of involvement that you want to have in that business. We're going to see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.